ועכשיו לקראת סיום אני רוצה לעסוק קצת בצרות של אחרים. ישראל היא אומנם המדינה הראשונה שנכנסה לסוג של סגר שני, אבל עושה רושם שעוד מדינות יבואו בעקבותיה. בבריטניה בימים האחרונים לא ממש שקט בעקבות העלייה במספר התחלואה והרצון לכונן סגר. כמובן שההשלכות הן פוליטיות וגורמות הרבה צרות לראש הממשלה בוריס ג'ונסון. איתנו על הקו נמצא יועצו הפוליטי של בוריס ג'ונסון, בין היתר גם במערכת הבחירות האחרונה, אלכס קראולי. Good evening, Alex. Good to have you with us.
Hi, evening.
So let me just present you to our viewers. You were the political advisor for Boris Johnson in the last campaign. Can we say that the COVID crisis is turning to a political crisis also in Britain?
Yes, look, it's been very, very difficult times for the government over the whole course of this crisis, as it has been for most governments around the world. I think if you look at most countries, they've all had their difficulties in trying to deal with a virus, because a virus, the only thing you can do to stop a virus is develop an effective vaccine. And we haven't got that yet. We hope to have it soon, but we haven't got it yet. Things started reasonably well for the government here. They had to introduce very stringent lockdown measures, and broadly the country supported them in doing that. Actually, their highest approval rating was during the lockdown itself. The problem started to come after that, when restrictions were eased, and then there was an element of confusion introduced as to what you could do and what you couldn't do. We got into the summer, people wanted to go on their regular summer holiday, and then travel restrictions were introduced, and they were often introduced at very short notice, and that understandably caused a lot of frustration. And there have been some of the usual political rows along the way that have undermined the government's authority and have made it more difficult for Boris and for the government to introduce measures and have people stick to them.
Alex, what I'm trying to understand, as us here, at least here in Israel, we suffer from lack of discipline. The lack of discipline in many cases, and specifically in this case, is coming after the lack of trust that we have towards the government. And the question is if the same situation is happening also in Britain. Are the people of the United Kingdom feel that they don't trust the government, and this is why they don't trust any measures that the government is trying to put on them?
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation. I mean, look, Boris gave an address to the nation last night where he called Britain a freedom-loving people, and that's our national character. We don't really take very well to people telling us what to do. We prefer to just sort of get on with it and make our own judgment. That being said, early in the crisis, most people in this country were willing to do what they were told. We were told to stay at home and only leave your home for essential reasons, and most people stuck to that. The problem came when there was quite a big political row in this country, where it emerged that the Prime Minister's most senior advisor had himself broken lockdown rules. That, as you can imagine, caused quite a great big stink, really. And the charge was put, well, if you guys don't stick to it, then why should anybody else? What made that row even more difficult was that the decision was made that this particular advisor was kept on, and Boris defended him quite staunchly. And that sent a very unfortunate message to most people in Britain, which said, well, this guy can get away with it, then maybe we don't need to follow these measures quite so closely. After that row, it is undoubtedly true that it got much harder for the government to maintain control of the situation.
Can we point a finger at someone? It's like, can we blame someone for the situation? Can we blame the lack of leadership that we are suffering all around the world, the feeling that we don't have an actual leader, or that this epidemic actually caught the entire world by surprise and the entire leadership of the world by surprise?
Unfortunately, the only thing you can blame is the virus itself. But it is certainly true that most countries around the world were caught by surprise. In this country, we obviously had a lot of contingency planning around infectious diseases. But those contingency plans were very much modeled on a sort of flu type illness. And the initial response from the government was to sort of follow that plan. But of course, every virus is new and the challenges are new, and you have to adapt. What it's done is it has exposed some of the weaknesses in the system of government in the UK and arguably around the world. Our government, like many, hasn't been able to move as quickly as it would like, and it hasn't been able to deliver as well as it would have liked. The constant complaint from Boris and the people who work around him in number 10 Downing Street, they say, well, we pull a lever and nothing happens. One of Boris's longer term aims is to reform the machinery of government and make it easier to deliver these kind of things. But of course, the crisis is very fast moving, and you can't fix the boat and sail it at the same time. You need to pick one or the other. And I think where perhaps he might reflect he could do things differently is in just focusing on what needs to be done now, rather than trying to fix a load of other things at the same time.
Is the empathy still there, or we have a short memory and, we don't remember that he got sick and people are blaming him for the entire situation?
Yes, it's been a very interesting change of fortune for him. During the first part of the crisis and when he was affected by COVID himself, he had his highest ever approval ratings. There was an enormous amount of sympathy and empathy for him and for the government. And it was widely acknowledged by most voters here that the government were doing the best job in a very bad situation, and they were given a lot of latitude to make mistakes. Now we're in a situation where we've seen his approval ratings fall, both for him personally and for the ruling Conservative Party, which forms the government in this country. The opposition Labour Party, I think in one poll recently, pulled neck and neck with the Conservative Party for the first time in a very long time. And so he's undoubtedly suffered a fall. And yes, I think there are short memories. I think most people haven't forgotten, but they've almost discounted the fact that he was ill himself with this disease, quite seriously ill as well. There was a stage of about a week where he was in intensive care, and there were some very, very genuine fears about his health. But that seems like an awful long time ago now. And now there's a lot more cynicism and frustration in the country at large.
The economic situation after the coronavirus, will it get back an impact on Brexit, or it will change the entire economic situation completely in Britain?
The economic impact of the pandemic has been really quite severe. We, like most of the countries, we've had to endure a lockdown and endure a massive economic hit. That's combined with the fact that the UK Treasury came forward with some of the most generous financial support measures of most Western countries. For example, the government covered 100% of the wages of most workers in the country. That has cost billions of pounds. And they have been in the process of unwinding that scheme. One of the reasons why we are, or rather why the government is very reluctant to go into a second stringent lockdown is because of the cost of it. The country simply cannot afford to keep borrowing billions of pounds and spending it on financial relief measures. We need to try and earn some money again. And look, you talk about Brexit. The last year, the country spent quite a lot of its time arguing about Brexit. At the back end of last year, we had an election that decisively settled that question once and for all. We have left the European Union. We are currently in negotiations about a trade deal. There are question marks as to whether that trade deal will be struck. So in terms of the economic impact of Brexit, actually there's a lot more certainty around that now than there was 12 months ago. Our main challenge is, how do we have a functioning economy in the period between now and when we get a vaccine that can be distributed to the whole population. And that's a challenge that every country faces.
Your situation is no better than ours. Yeah, we're in the same on the same boat, we can say. Alex Crawley, thank you very much for this talk with us, and thank you very much for clearing the time. Until the next quarantine, I hope that you won't get into the second one. We're already in it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.